If you're looking for proven ways to take your fundraising results to the next level, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, hosted by Tammy Zonker. Tammy has trained and led thousands of nonprofit organizations to collectively raise more than $500 million and is also recognized as one of America's top 20 fundraising experts. This is the podcast where Tammy equips and empowers amazing fundraising pros like you to transform your fundraising so you can transform the world. And now, let's hear from Tammy.
Today, I'm excited to talk with Emily Rasmussen, founder of Grapevine. Emily brings more than a decade of financing for impact, nonprofit, and social enterprise leadership experience to Grapevine. She was founding executive director of NYU's Center for Ballet and the Arts, launched the Lincoln Center at the Movies Global Media Initiative, and developed innovative financing models for impact at Enterprise Solutions to Poverty. Emily has consulted on event cinema for Disney Theatrical Group, taught creative and cultural entrepreneurship, and spent 2 years developing microfinance and fair trade programs in India. She's a board member of the Harvard Business School's Women's Association, a member of the LISC Emerging Leaders Council and After Arts Group, Nova Impact, and founding member of Untitled, an arts and business innovation initiative. Previously, she was a professional ballet dancer and performed with the Pacific Northwest Ballet. Emily holds her bachelor's from the Occidental College in Diplomacy, World Affairs, and Economics, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Wow. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate it. Thank you for that very generous introduction.
We're just so delighted to have you. So let's just jump in. It's super fascinating to learn about your really diverse background, from being a professional ballet dancer to your work in impact financing. How did your journey lead you to found Grapevine, and what inspired the focus on collaborative giving?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a big question. I was a ballet dancer for a period of time when I was younger and actually ended up having an injury that coincided with 9/11 happening, which really just opened my eyes to the broader stage, the global stage, if you will, and thinking about what I wanted to do with my life and the fact that I wanted to create something meaningful and I wanted to make an impact, a positive impact. And so it just led me to start thinking more about what that could mean. And that led me to undergrad to a school, Occidental College, where they had an internship program with the United Nations. So I was very interested in international relations, and through that interest became aware of and interested in economic development. And so spent some time while I was in undergrad in India working in that space, and ultimately decided to move to India after school in order to work for a couple of years in microfinance there. And so for anyone who is familiar with microfinance, it's this form of financing for communities that might lack access to finance otherwise. They might not have traditional collateral or access to loans, other things, where microfinance can come in and give access to typically smaller dollar amounts, where those funds can be invested back into the community, or people can use those funds to invest back into their businesses. And it's more a model that works on social proof and social collateral, where community members can get a loan. And then once they pay back their loan, another community member can get a loan. So anyway, I became very involved in and excited about this model and just thinking about alternative financing for communities and ways to create impact through that. Ultimately, I left India and moved to New York, where I was able to join a firm that was doing this kind of work globally. So got to experience that in many different countries and was really excited about that work. And also around that time, Kiva started taking off. Kickstarter was launching, and it was just these early days of the crowdfunding world. And I was really excited about this idea of technology potentially enabling us to unlock funds from communities around the world for communities around the world. Wasn't really sure what that looked like, though, or really meant, and had no technology background. So decided to explore that in business school and just try to learn a bit more. And so I was able to do some consulting for Kickstarter and launched a crowdfunding platform in business school, and was just exploring this concept, but also thinking about how do we go beyond that traditional kind of transactional crowdfunding campaign to create something more meaningful, something where donors feel it's more purposeful, more connected. and something where organizations and communities have a more recurring flow of funding. So all of that kind of led me to consider what could be, what a new model might look like. Wasn't really sure again what that would look like. So I spent some time in the nonprofit sector after business school. I was at Lincoln Center and NYU and was just learning more about donor engagement and what donors are looking for and the challenges in the nonprofit space, to deliver on some of those things. And ultimately, all of that kind of led me to this idea of building Grapevine, which is really the first crowd granting platform, I like to say, where it's distinct from crowdfunding and that it's about community, it's about collective resources that is, yes, your money, but also your knowledge and your experience, because it's also about collaborating as a group and recurring donations over time. So this kind of alternative to crowdfunding, it started to take shape. And when we were in our earliest days, a few giving circles discovered us and reached out. But ultimately, we were sort of coming at it from this alternative to crowdfunding perspective and building something more meaningful and more recurring over time. And through that experience, we realized that, oh, of course, there are groups of people that have been doing this for decades already in communities across the country and the world, really. And no one's really built anything to help them do this. So that's where we were able to step in and really get our start.
I love that story. And I love that it really is about collaboration and it's this rising up of the community coming together to really make a difference and just the meaningful nature of that. Right.
Mm.
We think of these mega donors and how they can make an impact, but these grassroots community circles collectively can really make a difference. Can you share with our listeners exactly how do you define, like, what is a giving circle and how do you facilitate that collective approach to philanthropy?
So a giving circle is really a simple, very simple concept. It's about a group of people that come together to connect with each other through this process of pooling their donations and then collaborating to decide what to support as a collective. So really it's group giving, but it's collaborative group giving, right? As opposed to me pitching into someone's crowdfunding campaign for a cause they've picked and they care about. I get to help decide where funding goes. I get to be part of this granting experience. A giving circle, they look like many things. I mean, we have very large groups with hundreds of people. We have much smaller groups, just families and friends, book clubs, things like that. We have groups that decide where to give their money by having nonprofits apply. Others will have members nominate nonprofits and then present, and ultimately they vote on which nonprofit to support. Some of our groups have expert guidance. So an expert might curate a list of nonprofit options for the group to decide upon. Others will have the group nominate and then experts will review and vet from there. So, it really is flexible as far as how these things happen, but all of them have this kind of core element where it's about a group of people coming together to pool their donations and then collaborate to decide what to support collectively.
I love that. So I understand, and you're more the expert in this space, but I understand that there are over 1,000 giving circles across the US that involve more than 60,000 members.
Right.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's quite powerful, but actually it's even better than that because that is the number of giving circles and members in them that are on our platform at Grapevine. But we actually estimate over 1/3 of the total community of giving circles at this point, which is a great number of them. But that just means we actually think there are probably about 3,000 giving circles that are out there. I'm not sure how many members in them, and there's actually some research going on right now around the broader movement. It's quite a grassroots movement that I think still many people haven't heard of, and it's continuing to grow quite a bit. You asked me a moment ago, what is our role at Grapevine? How do we support this movement? And so just to give everyone a little more clarity on that, those 1,000 giving circles that are on our platform, they essentially use our free tools and resources to house their giving circle. And so what that means is they set up a community page on Grapevine where they can invite their members in, they can communicate with members, they can collaborate, for example, nominating nonprofits, voting, events, all of those types of features, even kind of one-to-one automatic connections to pair members together so they can have one-on-one coffee chats and things to help build connection and community. All of that is built into the platform, as well as all of the payment pieces around this, right? So when members join, they can make that donation into the shared charitable fund for the Giving Circle, which is kind of like a community donor advised fund, if you will, right? A model like that where we hold on to the funds while the group then decides where they want to grant those funds. And then ultimately, we grant that money out to the operating nonprofit. So we provide all of the tax receipting and all of the transparency and tracking reporting for groups. So none of them have to handle the money and everyone can easily see where those funds go. I will just say, as we're seeing more nonprofits start giving circles as well to support their work directly, all of those same things are there, but maybe in slightly different forms, right? A nonprofit or a giving circle might not be deciding between which nonprofits to support or might not be granting money out to different nonprofits over time. So it might be all dedicated to a particular organization, but there are lots of ways that nonprofits are now using the same kind of community building, giving model to support their missions as well.
Okay. And they may be featuring different programs to align with supporter affinity. Is that
Exactly.
fair? Yeah.
Yeah, some of the nonprofits have been really thoughtful about the agency piece in this model, right? And we've actually supported some nonprofits in launching their giving circles where we've gathered feedback from members. And we found that for some members, that's really important. They really like that idea of being able to engage and help decide where funds go. And so nonprofits might share a few different programs or projects that they're working on. Great way to introduce your donors to more of the important work that you're doing and give them a real reason to lean in and better understand, because then you're telling them that they can help decide where their pooled gift is going to go, going to this program or that fellowship, whatever it might be. So they really feel that sense of connection through that agency. And then also just the connection to each other through that process. Often nonprofits will pull people together through events around that granting process, but also maybe just more broadly around their mission or just socially. And they're great ways to build the connection for the group too.
I love that. So if I'm a nonprofit, like our listeners, I'm a nonprofit, a fundraising professional, marketing professional, and I want to know what giving circles exist in my community, what
Mhm.
their priorities are, how I might get their attention and be considered for a grant. How do I understand where they are, who they are, and where our values might align?
It's a great question, and it's one we get often. So, we have built the Global Giving Circle directory. And when you go to grapevine.org, if you go to the resources tab on the top of the website, you'll see the Global Giving Circle directory is linked there. So, I always recommend nonprofits start there. Go to the directory, search for giving circles near you. You can put in your zip code and search within a certain radius and find those groups that are near you. You can also search for groups that are supporting different cause areas that you're working on. So, do that research, put together your short list, read as much as you can find on them in that directory and beyond, and then come up with a plan based on that for those particular groups. Some groups will be asking nonprofits to apply through an open application process, for example. So find that information and put that in your calendar. Reach out to the nonprofit or to the Giving Circle leader to learn more. A lot of groups will instead have members nominate nonprofits or introduce nonprofits in some form. If that's the case, be aware of that. Share those giving circles with your broader community of supporters, right? This is such a wonderful opportunity for you to share with those people who care about your work. Ask them if they're interested in joining a community of other donors who also care about your cause, your community, and being an advocate for you in that space, right? And so it's a great way to activate those existing volunteers, donors, board members to bring you into those spaces and give you that opportunity to make those connections and be considered for a grant. That's always the first thing that I recommend when a nonprofit is learning about this space. One, wanting to just learn a bit more about what these different types of groups look like, how they're structured, who's in them, and then two, how to get in front of them and the best way to do that.
Awesome. Emily, can you give a few impact stories about organizations or projects that have emerged from Grapevine Giving Circles?
Ugh, there are so many, Tammy. There's so many. And the impact that we have is really quite broad. It's from the nonprofit getting the funding and the impact they're able to have with that to the members joining and learning from each other and connecting with each other to just the broader philanthropic ecosystem and what this movement is doing on a higher level. But some of the nonprofit stories we hear, and there's one in particular I'm thinking of where a woman had been running this organization. It's less than 3 years old. They have a budget of less than $100,000. And by the way, this is very often the case with these Giving Circle nonprofits. A lot of Giving Circles are location based and they like to find those smaller organizations that have smaller budgets. This is where we really think that the Giving Circle model can have a lot of impact. And there's a particular organization where this woman had been running this organization to support women, and in particular, battered women who were coming off of, various challenges and were trying to recover. And they had a budget of less than $100,000 and they got this grant, an unexpectedly $10,000 grant. And she talked about how it was just life changing for them and how it really enabled them to continue to do their work. And I think that power of $10,000 all at once, that's from 100 people donating $100 each, right? So that's one lunch a month. So all of these people, their $100 is now part of this $10,000 gift that can be transformative for these organizations. And we've seen that in the research as well, that often these organizations, when they receive a gift like this, it becomes a stepping stone for them to then be able to go on to get that community foundation gift, right? This particular organization hadn't been around for 3 years, was not eligible for the local community foundation gifts. She talked about how she was repeatedly told no by the foundations because she didn't hit all the right marks. So this kind of gave her that bridge capital to get to that next stage that then opened up those other opportunities for her. So that's really one nice example. The organization is called Undestructible. Another example, more of a connection between a couple of community members. These two women met through their Giving Circle, happened to go to an event, happened to sit next to each other from very different industries, living in different neighborhoods. Felt like there was no way they would have connected otherwise, except they both cared about this community and wanted to give back and just built this incredible friendship. And they talked about how it led to them becoming good friends. It led to them bringing in their spouses who also became good friends and has just led to an even richer experience while they've continued to participate in the Giving Circle and build their impact together there. It's also, really built out their personal lives in this meaningful way.
I love those stories. To me, it really speaks to the power of community and the need to belong
Yes.
and to know that I make a difference, but together we make a difference, an even bigger difference.
Yes. I think
And
that's so right. I was just going to add to that one thing that I love about this is you're so right. It's that power of belonging, right? And it's that sense of connection. And we've seen that so much in these Giving Circles where people feel like they belong. Everyday philanthropists, everyday people who might not think of themselves as philanthropists suddenly feel a sense of connection and belonging in a philanthropic community. And so it's just a great stepping stone for people, along their philanthropic journey. Entry point for many, expansion point for some as well, right? And really through that sense of belonging. And I think as a result of that, we like to say that Giving Circles are diversifying and democratizing philanthropy because they are engaging this much broader, diverse community of everyday people in giving back. And that's important when we think about our own feelings about ourselves and the impact that we can have in the world, right? And who gets the right to make a difference and to decide what's valued in our communities. But also, when we actually look at where money goes, it matters who's giving and who's making those decisions. Because if you and I decide where money goes, we might decide differently than these people over here. And these are all valid perspectives. So if you want to make sure the things you care about are valued and funded in your community, it's really important that you have a vehicle, a way to engage and participate in those decisions.
It's so empowering. Let's face it, within so many organizations, we have organized our donor engagement around gift values, right? So if you are considered a major donor, you get more preferential treatment. You hear more stories. You get more feedback on how your gifts are making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this all the time when I conduct like fundraising effectiveness assessments within organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Their overall donor retention rate is not impressive. And they would be the first to admit that. But if they look at donors at $1,000 above, or donors who are giving $5,000 and above, their retention rates are 75, 80% because those people feel like they're part of something. They feel like they belong.
Right.
And the non-philanthropist doesn't see themselves as a philanthropist. They see themselves as a caring, generous person.
Yeah.
It feels like giving circles, like that's where they feel a greater sense of belonging and are
Mm.
treated in a less transactional kind of way. It's truly more meaningful, the way that it's set up. They choose, they collaborate, they're with friends, they belong.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's a real challenge for nonprofits. It's completely understandable why the system is the way it is and why they prioritize these certain donors, right? And so I think what's really exciting about this giving circle model, though, is that it gives nonprofits an alternative and it gives donors an alternative. And you might not be able to give every $100 donor the opportunity to sit down with you across the table for a coffee chat. You might not be able to give them the opportunity to select where their donation is going to go, which program. You might not be able to just share updates with them and reach out via email and or jump on a call. But if you think about 100 people donating $100, so now it's a $10,000 gift. Now you can spend that extra time sharing with the group all of those things, right? And building those connections. And you don't have to be the one. I think often in the nonprofit space, we think about fundraising being relationship building. Absolutely. But that sort of implies a more one-to-one relationship, right? I think what giving circles do is they take that and they expand upon it and they say, actually, fundraising can be about community building. And you don't have to be the node on the other side of each of those donors being connecting, right? You can help facilitate the community and then create opportunities for those community members to connect with each other. Just like the story I shared a moment ago, those two women have had such a meaningful experience in our giving circle. I have not met with or spoken to either of them, but I know their story and I know how excited they are. And that is something that I can't do. I can't scale that, but this model can scale that kind of experience. So it
Yeah.
opens up a whole other experience for donors and a whole other, I think, opportunity for these nonprofits to really diversify their donor bases. I will also just say, I mean, keeping in mind that that nonprofits are all resource constrained. We know that. But, when you think about this model enabling you to expand your donor base, what that does, it actually also introduces you to a much broader diversity of donors. And out of those, we have found there are a broad range of capacities within that community. And so this becomes the entry point for a broad range of donors. Out of that 100 donors that are joining this giving circle, there might be 5 or 10 of those that have more capacity. And as they start to connect with you more, there's opportunity to basically identify and continue to cultivate some of those potential major gift donors down the line. So I think there are ways that this is also a really smart strategy for any nonprofit looking to bolster that more traditional line of major gift fundraising.
I agree. And I think it truly is a yes and strategy, right?
Yeah.
As we work to use automation and predictive modeling and behavioral economics in our engagement of donors at every level for those who give directly, yes, and giving circles are just another way to engage, as you said so eloquently, diverse communities, people who may not be aware of us or give to us directly, but as a part of that community, they find a way to fulfill their collective collaborative vision. I think that's really powerful. Grapevine seems very accessible, right? I mean, it's online, it's a free platform. Amazing. What are the challenges that a nonprofit organization or a group, a giving circle that's trying to emerge, like what challenges do they encounter and
Mhm.
how do they overcome them as they're bringing these groups together and embracing this platform?
It's a simple concept, this model, right? It's really pretty basic at its core, but it turns out it's a lot of work to try and do this on your own, and it's amazing to me. Hats off to all of the people who have been driving this giving circle movement forward since the early 80s here in the US, because they've been doing that and they've been spending inordinate amount of time communicating with members, collecting donations, tracking things, trying to get the money to the nonprofit, reporting back, all of this without a resource, a centralized resource to help them do this. So I think that's number one, like giving circles, anyone who's wanted to start a giving circle, has historically run into quite a few challenges around how do I collect money? I'm not a nonprofit. How do I give tax receipt? How do I do this and then get the money in one check to the nonprofit and not make them cash 100 checks at a time, right? How do I coordinate with all of these members and make sure people know that we're there? A lot of people I talk to have never heard of a giving circle before, or they've heard of one, but it's been a bit of a whisper. Oh, yes, I've heard of these mysterious groups of people that give money away, but who are they? Where do you find them? How do you join them? It's just been a lack of ability to communicate, make all of this known and findable, and a place where people can engage. So historically, those have been some of the challenges for giving circles. Beyond just knowing about the model, it really has been this movement that grew via word of mouth for decades. And so now, just over the past several years, we have a lot more resources flowing into this movement and support. And so that growth rate has really been picking up. So we're very excited about that. And now, you can think about Grapevine as this all in one solution for your giving circle. So we've really tried to make it that place where you can go, you can start your giving circle page on Grapevine. We'll handle all of the administrative overhead for you, all the donation processing, tax receipting, tracking, granting, all of that is there. Plus, you have this great community space that's this really engaging place for your community to connect and for you to facilitate everything you need, from nominating and voting on nonprofits to organizing events and sharing things out and recruiting more people to join. So with all of that in place, I think now the challenge is much more around people learning about this model and then people starting something, right? It can be hard to start something from scratch. We always recommend to new leaders who are thinking about it to think of 5 to 10 people that you think would really love this and just get behind it because they know you, they love the idea, get them on board, and then maybe have an event and ask each of those people to invite a few people to that event where you can share about the concept more broadly and kind of say, okay, who's with us? Who wants to join? Right there, you might launch with 20 to 30 people. Even if it's 5 to 10 or 10 to 20, then that word of mouth dynamic can continue to grow. So that kind of initial launch point, I think, is still a place where people get a little hung up. And sometimes it's also just a matter of going back to the Nike slogan, just do it, right? Don't overthink
Yeah.
it. Don't get in your own way. Like, just get started and make this part of the experience with the community. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge I see at this point for people thinking about starting a group. By the way, that's the same thing with a nonprofit, right? If a nonprofit wants to start a group, they're also thinking about how many staff hours do we have in a week and how do we support this? And they might love the idea, but we have those major gift donors we really need to be focusing on, right? And so I think we've actually added some more resources at Grapevine to support nonprofits with strategy and planning, with launch and growth of a group, and even with community management to just take that off their plate. So they don't have to worry about it. We can help them get it up and running for them. The one other thing I'd say on the side that is maybe like the potential member side, right? Not the leader side, is just finding groups that people want to join. So we've done a great job of growing the number of groups to about 3,000, we think now. And there are lots of groups out there that people can search and find that might resonate with them. So hopefully we've mostly solved that, but we always encourage people, if they don't find a group that resonates with them and they're not ready to start one, reach out to us. Let us know. Every single week, we help to launch new groups. And it's often from those kind of requests coming in from the community that inspire some of those new groups that we launched. Hopefully, we've solved a lot of the problems, but if there are any more that people run into, let us know. We want to be that go-to resource.
Yeah. Anytime I think you're birthing something, and again, you're well on the path, this is an established process at this point that you've created. But I feel like there's always iterations, right? Culture changes, technology changes. As Grapevine continues to accelerate the collective giving movement, what shifts in philanthropy or giving trends do you envision in the years ahead? You think about your Grapevine roadmap. What is ahead?
It's an exciting question. We often talk about the future and what we envision. And I have this vision that one day everyone is in a giving circle, if not 2 or 3, because they're in one that's in their local community, right? They're in the one that's connected to the cause they really care about. And they're maybe in the one that's connected to another network, whether it's their team at work or it's their book club or alumni association. And so I really do think this model of giving is just very natural for us. Giving is a social thing often. And I think we like to learn and connect and engage in this way. And I think this is a really nice way to do that through a methodology that is purposeful and meaningful for the donor and also really valuable and impactful for the nonprofit sector. I do think that donors right now, well, we're in a moment, right? Some would say we're in a generosity crisis moment and new donors are down and donations are down and donor retention is down. And so I think it's a moment, though, a bit of a reckoning for all of us to kind of take a step back and think about how society has changed, how donor behavior has changed, what people are looking for. And I hope that the Giving Circle model, the growth of the model, the excitement around this model is a bright spot for everyone in this sector to take notice of it and think about what it means for them. What can you learn from this? What can you bring back to your community? Can you start a Giving Circle in your community to help bolster more giving and support more of these small nonprofits? What can you learn from this and bring back to your nonprofit? What kind of features here in this model really resonate with donors that also resonate with you that you could implement? So I'm hopeful that all of these things will bring us toward this future where more people are connecting and growing personally and socially with their communities while increasing their impact together. That would be the vision I'd like to put out there. And I hope we're all working toward
I,
together.
I love it. I mean, I feel like meaningful giving, again, because of that warm glow, because of the true deep joy and meaning of giving, knowing that you're making a difference in something, a cause, an area that you deeply care about,
Mhm.
and you have that social belonging of that community. I mean, what's not to love, right? Yeah,
I
it's
think we
so
could just
good.
end right there, Tammy. What's
Yes,
not to love?
boom. What's not to love? Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on creating Grapevine, on the success of it, and, really shining a light on this movement and really being a leader in that space. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been a journey. And like I said, I did not come from this space initially, right? We were working on a concept and Giving Circles discovered us while we were kind of thinking of a model theoretically that looked something like what they were doing and thought, wouldn't that be great? So it really was a wonderful connection. And I can certainly take no credit at all for this model or movement. All of that has been around for a long time, but it has been really exciting to be able to be a part of that and help bring that movement online and really try to make it more accessible and modern, help grow it to get more people involved.
Yeah. Beautiful. Emily, at the end of each episode, I like to ask a few rapid fire questions to provide even more value for our listeners. Are you ready?
I hope so. Yes. I'll try my best.
All right. First question. What's the best fundraising advice you've ever received?
You're always fundraising, and everyone at an organization is a fundraiser.
Mm,
Doesn't matter if you work in the development department or not. Just-
amen to that. What book do you recommend to our audience and why?
Oh, goodness. I'll go with one that I read early on when I was getting into the nonprofit sector, a book called Give and Take by Reynold Levy. So he was the former president of Lincoln Center and my first boss in the nonprofit space and a renowned fundraiser and just very tactical and strategic. I found his advice just very helpful. So some of the more traditional fundraising tactics in there, but I think a good classic.
Yeah, good. What are the three most important traits a successful fundraiser must possess?
Oh, I think it all has to start and end with authenticity for you to really be successful, right? You really do care about this mission. You really do believe in the impact you're having and to the point where you really do feel like you're presenting an opportunity for the donor. You're not making an ask for you. You're giving them an opportunity to participate in this incredible work that you're doing. So it's more of a gift. I think it really does kind of begin and end with that authenticity piece. Probably the second is courage because just making an ask is hard and putting yourself out there and doing it over and over again when people say no over and over again, because that will happen. It's the numbers game. I think, that courage is important and maybe to follow on that, just that perseverance, right? To keep going. And I think that there are tips around that too, around learning what the process is and trusting the process. So each little block in the road doesn't become too much, it doesn't feel like too much of a hit.
Yeah, those are three good ones for sure. What's your favorite fundraising application or tool? And it's fine to be shameless here.
Grapevine. I will say I'll plug another one too that we've been using recently that's also been helpful, which is a tool called iWave, which basically does screening, of donors. And I've just found that to be helpful to learn a little bit more about some of our donors as we're thinking about segmenting and providing opportunities and engagement with them as a next step.
Yeah, I'll add my endorsement to iWave as well. We're an iWave partner, and they were our transformational level sponsor of our recent virtual conference, Transform 24.
Great.
So we love iWave.
Nice. I didn't even know that.
No, yeah,
There you go.
there we go. What's your favorite conference and why?
I will admit that I am bad with conferences. It's actually a goal of mine this year to try and attend some more. I normally hear about them when people are posting them on LinkedIn. I think, oh, I should have gone to that. That would have been good. So I don't have a broad range to pull from, but I have been to the TED conference a couple of times. And I just think that's such an incredible experience because it's so mind expanding, just all the incredible people that are there and the stories, the learning that happens, and then the people that you get to be in rooms with there is just another level of inspiration. Been twice now, but I hope to go more.
Amazing. It's on my list as well. All right. Last question, Emily. Knowing what you know now about fundraising, what advice would you give your younger self just getting started in the profession?
One other piece of advice that's actually been given to me that I really valued in a slightly different context, but similar, was you might as well bet on yourself. And I think that's really nice because it reminds you that, you might be stepping into an organization and into a system and into an industry with pre-established things. But I think if anything, we've all learned over the past 5 years, even just how shaky all of those things are and how anything can happen. And I think it's always good to have that belief if you feel something, if there's an opportunity that you'd like to pursue or to think outside the box, you might as well, because none of these things are forever. You just don't know. I think it's just a good thing that extends beyond fundraising as well.
I love that advice. Emily, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Wonderful to be here with you. I appreciate it.
If you want to learn more about Emily, Grapevine, or any of the other resources that we've discussed today, check out the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intentional Fundraiser Podcast, and keep on transforming your fundraising so you can transform the world. The Intentional Fundraiser Podcast is a Fundraising Transformed original. It's hosted by me, Tammy Zonker, founder and president of Fundraising Transformed, where we help equip and empower fundraisers, nonprofit leaders, and board members to transform their fundraising so they can transform the world. Visit fundraisingtransform.com/podcast to subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to my newsletter to get fundraising lessons, tools, and helpful resources delivered straight to your inbox each month. If you want my help with taking your fundraising to the next level, become a member of my Fundraising Transformers community as a growth member and join me live each month where I'll teach you the same strategies I use to lead, train, and coach thousands of nonprofits, social service organizations, healthcare foundations, private schools, colleges, and universities to collectively raise more than $500 million. Including a single gift of $27.1 million. As a member, you can participate in my Ask Me Anything sessions every month and get answers to your burning questions. Chat with other growth members inside our private and safe online community about what you're working on, struggling with, and share lessons learned. And get instant access to my growing library of on-demand self-paced training classes. New content is added every single month. Learn more about becoming a member at fundraisingtransform.com/growth. Talk soon.